No one in the entertainment industry could have predicted that a quiet hospital corridor would become the epicenter of the most emotional and shocking revelation of the year. Just days ago, Shen Yue's sudden hospitalization was nothing more than a swirl of rumors, half-truths, fan theories, and wild speculation that multiplied by the minute. Yet as dawn broke, whispers started circulating that Dylan Wang had personally called for an urgent press conference inside the hospital. At first, the media refused to believe it. Why would one of China's biggest rising stars bypass studios, agencies, and PR halls only to face the world from a simple hospital room? But soon, the truth proved stranger and far more devastating than anyone expected. Reporters who arrived at the scene described the atmosphere as eerie, too quiet, too tense, too filled with a kind of dread that even veteran journalists recognized immediately. Instead of flashing lights and camera crews, only a few carefully selected reporters were quietly escorted through security checkpoints. When they entered the small conference room, they found no grand backdrop, no stylist, no manager whispering instructions. Just a plain wooden table, a few microphones, and a row of plastic water bottles that looked embarrassingly ordinary for such an extraordinary moment. In the front row, journalists sat stiffly, unsure what awaited them. Behind them, the door connecting directly to Shen Yue's private recovery room remained closed, guarded by hospital staff. Everything about the room felt raw and unpolished, the exact opposite of a publicity stunt. The silence shattered when Dylan Wang walked in. Gone was the polished actor with charming smiles and effortless charisma. In his place stood a man visibly exhausted, eyes red, hair unstyled, shoulders heavy with sleepless nights. But what shocked everyone wasn't his appearance. It was the presence of the two people walking beside him, Shen Yue's parents. Her mother's hands trembled slightly, her face drawn with fatigue and fear. Her father looked stoic but shattered, as though the last few days had aged him years. Their presence alone told the world that this was not about gossip nor scandal. This was about truth, pain, and something deeply personal. When Dylan approached the microphone, his fingers shook. He bowed so deeply that several reporters gasped, and when he straightened up, his voice cracked on the first word. He apologized, not for misunderstanding, not for rumors, but for staying silent while chaos spread online. He confessed that he had avoided the public not out of guilt, but because he was fighting behind closed doors to protect Shen Yue and her family from the storm. His raw honesty immediately shifted the tone of the room. Then, with a breath that seemed to take the last bit of strength he had left, he admitted something no fan nor journalist expected to hear so directly. He loved her. He said it without hesitation, without PR safe wording, without looking at any manager for approval. He said, "I stand here not as an actor, but as someone who loves her deeply, more deeply than I ever admitted to myself." Reporters froze, letting the weight of the words settle. But Dylan wasn't finished. He revealed that Shen Yue had been battling a serious private illness for months, longer than even her closest colleagues realized. She had suffered through filming schedules, overseas flights, sleepless nights, and pain she hid behind bright smiles. He described moments when she joked about being tired, when in reality she was fighting to stay conscious between scenes. She didn't want pity. She didn't want to be seen as weak. She wanted the world to remember her smile, not her suffering. His voice broke as he admitted that he had let her hide it for too long. At that moment, Shen Yue's mother reached out and placed her hand on Dylan, a quiet but powerful gesture that brought several reporters to tears. Her father spoke softly, thanking Dylan for being the son we never asked for, but always hoped would stand beside our daughter. And then, just when the room thought they had heard the most emotional confession of the day, Dylan dropped the announcement that changed everything. He would be taking an indefinite hiatus from acting. At the height of his career, at the peak of fame many actors spend decades chasing, he was choosing to step away. He said he could not continue acting, smiling for cameras, pretending everything was fine, while the person he loved was fighting to heal. His only focus from this moment forward would be staying with her, protecting her, helping her recover. Journalists stared in disbelief. A star voluntarily walking away from fame was unheard of, especially for love. Within minutes, fans outside the hospital began crying openly as the news spread. Some held banners reading, "Stay strong, Shen Yue," and "We support you, Dylan." Others whispered prayers. Online, hashtags exploded across multiple countries, dominating search rankings in China, Korea, Thailand, Vietnam, and the Philippines. And then came the question everyone had been too afraid to ask openly for years. A young reporter, speaking with a trembling voice, asked Dylan if he and Shen Yue were more than friends. The room held its breath. Dylan looked at the reporter, then at Shen Yue's parents, then at the microphone. He didn't flinch. He said, "She is my family. She has always been my family." It was the kind of truth that needed no further explanation. The room sunk into stunned silence, the kind that comes when a truth long suspected finally becomes real. Outside the hall, fans who had been waiting for hours started crying as the news spread. Some knelt, some hugged strangers, some covered their faces as tears poured uncontrollably. Security guards had to hold the line as crowds pressed forward, desperate to catch a glimpse of Dylan after the conference. Meanwhile, in her hospital room, Shen Yue's reportedly watched the entire conference from her bed. Nurses said she cried softly through most of it, squeezing her mother's hand and whispering that Dylan was foolish for sacrificing so much for her, but that she felt safe, loved, and more determined than ever to recover. Within hours, the entertainment industry reacted. Directors and actors praised Dylan's courage. Critics debated whether he had revealed too much, but fans agreed on one thing: gratitude. Gratitude that love, loyalty, and selflessness still existed in an industry obsessed with fame, image, and perfection. Gratitude that behind glamorous lights were real people with real hearts. Offers began pouring in. Future roles for Dylan whenever he chose to return, messages of support for Shen Yue, and renewed admiration from brands that suddenly saw sincerity more powerful than any marketing strategy. What comes next remains uncertain. Will Dylan return to acting? Will Shen Yue recover fully and come back stronger? Only time will tell. But one thing is undeniable. The press conference didn't just reveal secrets. It revealed a bond the world had only guessed at. A bond no rumor could break, no scandal could cheapen, and no distance could weaken. And as fans around the world wait for the next chapter in their story, one truth stands unshaken. Dylan Wang has shown that sometimes the greatest role a person can play is standing beside the one they love when the world is watching. In the hours that followed, the hospital grounds transformed into an ocean of supporters. Fans brought flowers, handwritten letters, photos from Shen Yue's past dramas, and even small paper cranes symbolizing hope and healing. Some fans who had once shipped them jokingly felt guilty for ever treating their bond as mere fan service, now realizing the depth of their connection was